Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I have a fabulous guest that I've been trying to connect with for what, 6 months, 8 months, maybe more. There's been a fire and a move and another move and another move and a few others after that, and Bali and dysregulation and a whole pile of stuff that has kept us apart until now. We were just joking that the moons and stars and planets had to align before we could come together to do this amazing show. So I'm so excited to introduce Amy. Amy, oh my gosh, I need to double check how I say your last name, Amy. How do I say your last name?
It's Guerrero, however you can say Guerrero.
Okay, I'm glad you said that better than me. And she is a trained somatic experiencing part work practitioner, which is amazing. So we're talking like inner child work and parts work and younger work and somatic experiencing going into the body and feeling and being. And I've been wanting to connect with you for so long. So welcome.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Yeah, I just want to settle in a little deeper into all of that because it's so funny how this can make so much sense to me as I've been like deep in this work for so long. And to the world, it's like, well, what does that even mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about here? And how does that relate to living every day in my body in this lifetime and moving
Yes, let's
through?
break it down. Let's break it down. What's somatic experiencing, what it means. We're going to dive into all those things and play, I think, a little bit more close to the heart for both of us, playing with how we're playing with this work in our own lives, in relationships, which is going to be super potent conversation. So let's break down somatic experiencing, what that means, what you do, all that stuff.
Yeah. I'll give a little bit of a backstory just to storytell a bit so that we can really feel this
Please.
together with the audience. And like, when I became chemically dependent on alcohol, which was such a shock to my body, mind, and spirit, and my ego, of course, as well, of just like, wait, what? My favorite down regulation tool, my favorite way to relax, I'm now not able to consume without being chemically dependent and needing more just to like function.
Mm.
So that experience in itself, where I was already a yoga practitioner for so many years and I already had so much embodiment, I still couldn't really live in my body fully without something in between me and the world. And we do this as humans in a lot of different ways where we escape ourselves, and mine just
Mm-hmm.
happened to form into a real deal chemical dependency. And the only way that I was going to live, literally live, because this was such a shock to my system, was to come into somatic experiencing work, which meant to come deeper into my body, to understand the like literally intrinsic ways that I could not stand being in my body.
Mm.
And this chemical dependency brought me into SE on a deeper level, somatic experiencing on a deeper level, to really understand where the trauma was stuck in my fascia, where these pain bodies, I'm going to use a lot of different language, so whatever lands with you listeners,
Yeah, we'll break
you'll
them
hear
down.
it. Yeah. But like, it was just like, oh, I need to go inward in order to change and regroove the way that I experience myself in this human form in my body, and therefore my relationship to everything outside of myself. And so somatic experience is this beautiful way of noticing and naming and being able to literally recruit the mind to understand the way the body is responding to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. Because
it's freedom and all of the
yeah,
ways.
total
Yeah.
freedom. Because like our brain could be like, go for it, do it. And our body is like, no, like hell no. So it's a way of going into the body. My listeners will hear me talk about a lot of we have to come home in the body. We have to go into the body to heal the pieces because the body never forgets. The body always remembers, and it will stop us from going after what we want and desire in our life or how we want to feel or be in relationships because body is scared. Body is remembering past lived experiences and going, no fucking way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the top down approaches that are taught in 12-step programs and in treatment centers and in all of these traditional ways of getting well from quote unquote addiction, which I just don't believe in. And so
And break down
my
top down for our listeners. Top
top
down,
down, yeah, top down
head
means
talking.
that these approaches are to start to change a mind that is being affected by the body. You cannot change your mind, you cannot change your thoughts until you can create some sense of rootedness in your body. So my homecoming to myself is my body of work, Regrooven, which is like we start here in your physical body, even though your body's scared. Then we sit with your body as long as we need to create a little bit of spaciousness. So then we can recruit your mind to start being in service to your body. And most of
Yes.
our belief systems in this 4,000 years of patriarchy have existed in the mind serves the mind comes first before the body. And that was a beautiful way to take our agency and our power away. And now that we're really bringing that back and bringing that home, it's like, oh no, actually, my intuition, my body, my pussy, like she knows.
Mm-hmm.
She knows so much that I'm surprised. Sometimes I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm saying yes, but she's saying no. Like,
Yeah.
and she's
There's been times
doing
she
that.
said yes, and I'm like, what? Fuck
Yeah.
no. My brain's
Yeah.
like, fuck no. But when we trust body, whether it's
Yeah.
pussy, womb, intuition, all of
Yeah.
that juicy aliveness, and because body knows, it never forgets what it needs, what it doesn't need, what hurt it, and so forth. When we trust that, it leads us to exactly what we desire, which is so cool. But getting our brain on board so that we're not blowing out our window of tolerance. And for those who are listening, our window of tolerance, like, what are we talking about here? Getting our brain on board so that we're not triggered, so that we're not reacting, so that we're not angry, so that we're not projecting on a partner, so we're not pushing them away, sabotaging ourselves. So
Mm.
many different things going on. We have to, what I'm hearing you say is we have to create that safety and that trust again in our body so that we can bring brain and body and parts work and inner child work, shadow work, trauma work, whatever you want to call it and name it, because we all have different pieces and parts. So
Yeah.
we can bring them all together so that they
Yeah.
can work, so that we can operate in one grounded, whole person, mind, body,
Absolutely.
spirit, which is what people say, right? Mind, body, spirit. And until you break it down, it really doesn't make sense. It sounds lovely, mind, body, spirit. But that is getting mind, body, and spirit to work together to feel regulated.
Yeah, and I do want to bring something in that's particularly important in my story, and anyone who has um, been in a relationship with dependency of any type.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in that case, I couldn't trust my body
Mm-hmm.
because I was chemically, biologically dependent. And so my body had attuned to sending messages towards the things that were actually hurting me more. So listen, listeners, when your body is attuning you to the familiarity of the abusive relationship, when your body is attuning you to the scarcity of I never will have enough money, when your body is attuning you to the codependency of like I need that person in order to live or feel okay in myself, we can't
Yeah.
trust our bodies. And so this is where we actually need our mind to start to support and guide our body back into the unfamiliar feelings of safety, of living without the quote unquote dependency that you've created in your life. And so there is this tricky nuance in this work where people are like, yeah, well, my body said to go do that. And I'm like, yeah, your body said to go hurt you again because it's so familiar. And in this
Yes.
case, you
And is that
can't
body or is
actually
it
trust.
brain?
Well, it's
Yeah.
body. Well, it's actually body because there literally is that chemical dependency.
In that dependency part. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it is a nuance that I'm expert in. And this is what I bring to the addiction recovery space that is unlike anything else because it's so compassionate.
Hmm. That is so important. That
And
love, that
there's,
compassion, that acceptance, that approval, that welcoming of everything that is, and then going from there.
yeah, because there's so much shame in any
Mm.
kind of codependency or workaholic dependency or chemical dependency, marijuana, and just all of the different ways that we've used to cope and escape our body come with a lot of shame. And
Absolutely.
again, our bodies can be um, intoxicated with shame. And in those cases, we can't trust our body. And so there is that little
Yes.
nuance that we can thread through this conversation that I would really like to gift everyone that maybe didn't even realize that you're struggling with like 3 or 4 glasses of wine every night just
Hmm.
to numb, and you feel shame about it, so you haven't talked about it. So really inviting those listeners out there that like, or smoking pot every day just to kind of numb it down, or are eating a lot of sugar, or are working more, like
Overworking.
there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong here. And we can bring that and thread that into this very intimate conversation.
There's so many different ways, and let's keep listing them. You've listed so many about ways that people numb out to avoid what they need to face. Like one, I've already noticed, we've been in a new house since March. I was away for a month too, so only a couple months here. And my neighbor cuts the grass, I swear, every 2 days. And it's become, I'm laughing at it and I'm joking about it, but it's like he literally needs out of the house. Like there's something going on that he is avoiding because that grass was already shorter than our grass. It definitely didn't need to be cut again, right? Like there's little things that we do to numb out. Now that's not totally unhealthy yet. I would love to know, what are you avoiding? Like, what are you running away from? What are you trying to get away from? Is it the intimacy? Is it the lack of? Is it you're not sharing your truth? There's something there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to go into that more compassionate inquiry is the way through, is the way to start having the mind serve the body and the body come back to the truth of, it's really, really, really uncomfortable for me to sit here in the knowing that I'm not really living my purpose, or
Mm.
like feeling
Hmm.
my purpose anymore, or that I play this role in this relationship that isn't really true for me, but I've been playing this role for so long that I'm afraid to get out of it, or that
That's a
I'm
powerful
really,
one. Yeah.
yeah, or I'm really
Same for a
unhappy.
job.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Yeah, your people stay
Yeah.
in jobs that they hate, that are draining them, that are killing them, but staying on the hamster wheel is easier than getting off sometimes. It feels like it.
Yeah, it's because it's a lot less sensational. The familiarity of the sensation, which is to numb, becomes very familiar. I mean, our world likes us numb because then we don't have as much access to our sequencing skills to be the creative life force energy that we truly are. And so Instagram and the algorithm and Facebook and social media and all of these things are literally created for us to be numb and to be highly satiated with huge dopamine hits and dopamine floods that take us away and distract us. So that is a
Hmm.
chemical dependency. Social media
Same with
is
a
a
dating app.
chemical dependency. Dating apps are so
Yes.
I've never dated on an app, and I'm not that social on social media. Like I definitely lean into my team to be that for me, because I
I've
just
pulled
don't
back as well.
enjoy that. Yeah, it's just like, I want to be there responding to people from this place where I'm full of energy and life force, not where I'm like comparing and despairing and feeling the very familiar feelings for me of that chemical reaction. And so
Yeah, and
anytime I'm
fighting
tracking, yeah, that
fighting the
chemical,
algorithm, trying to show up, and it's like, you know what? Back right off and trust that the right people are going to find in what's being done by team, and that is their expertise. And then they're not emotionally connected to it too, right? Which is much healthier for me as well. Yeah,
yeah,
because very quickly we can get caught up in all of these places where we're comparing, where we are judging, where we are getting a hit of this, the dopamine and the serotonin and all these good feel good hormones, even from social media or from a dating app or from a relationship or whatever that may be.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
it's quite deep. And I think every single human on the planet needs to understand this so they can recognize it in their own lives, so they can pick up on it, so that they can go,
yeah,
oh, I'm doing that. And not in a way to shame you. We
no,
don't want to create more shame. We want to disassemble shame. We want to get to the point where it's like, oh, okay, I'm doing this. Do I want to do this? Is this my choice? Or am I being caught in this cycle of just going through the motions and getting the hits of whatever hormones and pleasures coming at us,
Yeah.
or addiction or whatever that may be. It's
Yeah.
all kind of connected.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like that's why I wrestle with the word addiction, because it's just like it's bringing pleasure and ease and soothing to your system, right? And then it becomes a habitual pattern. And so how do we interrupt the habitual pattern? That's just like the name of the game. That's what
Hmm.
regrooving is. It's like, whoa, there I am. And so I love to just say, like, with conscious awareness, you can transform this, because then you get into acceptance and approval of the behavior, and the behavior becomes way less intoxicating, and then it can naturally fall out of your life, and something can be regrooved.
Yeah, way less intoxicating. And another word I would use is it has less hold on you
Yeah, that's
because you've eradicated the shame and the doubt and the embarrassment or the whatever you may be holding around it. And you're like, oh, now I'm neutral. So what do I want? What do
Mhm.
I want? What do I need? Let's go into how do you use this in your everyday life? How do you
Oh yeah.
use this showing up in how you're showing up in your everyday life, in your relationships, in all of it?
Yeah. In my opinion, the best way to bring this into everyday life is a noticing and naming process. And it starts, just noticing how you are behaving in the world, and the sensations and the energy and the emotion that's being felt in your body when you are behaving in the world. So for instance, you're on the dating app and you're like, oh my gosh, every time I open the dating app, I feel a rush of energy come up from the bottom of my pelvic bowl through my heart, and then my jaw clenches down and my asshole tightens and my shoulders come up to my ears, and I'm suddenly bracing for impact as I swipe whatever way I'm swiping. And then as soon as I swipe the way that I want the person to respond to me, then I notice this other thing starting to happen, where I'm tapping my fingers in anticipation of when are they going to respond back to me. It's just like really learning your system from the somatic perspective of what's happening. So then 2 hours later, when you feel depleted and drained and angry or resentful or comparison, or you're looking at yourself in the mirror and wondering if you need to lose a few pounds before you're going to meet your
Mm.
person, or you're, binge eating or binge watching Netflix, or scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on Instagram, you're like, oh, I can track that back to the moment I opened the dating app.
Hmm.
Okay, so now I know. So tomorrow when I open the dating app, I'm going to do it outside, where my feet are grounded in some grass that my neighbor just cut for the 10th
Mm.
time this week. Or I'm going to do this by the pool with my friends and have some connection and co-regulation while I'm doing it. I'm going to
Yes.
relax my jaw and relax my pelvic bowl, and I'm going to set a timer, and I'm only going to be on the app for 7 minutes.
Mm.
And I'm going to notice how I show up differently when that happens, right? That is how we show up every day with this work. We start noticing, we start naming, and then we start to gently,
Love it.
gently, gently transform the behaviors.
Love it. I love it, love it, love it. And it's not an easy thing to do. I'm going to speak, from experience where it's really hard for me to remember not being able to name things like this because this is what I've done for years now. However, I can recognize it in relationship with my partner where it's new to him. But we're practicing naming these things. We're practicing naming when we're triggered. We're actually practicing going. He said to me the other night, oh, I just triggered you. And I was like, I don't think so. And he's like, your body language just totally changed. And I paid attention. I was like, yeah, okay, maybe you did. And it was such a minute trigger, but I was like, yeah, okay, I did change my body language. I totally closed up. And other times I recognize them when they're bigger, and I'm like, ooh, and I'm going back and we're practicing actually naming them. Like, oh, okay. So maybe it's in the moment, maybe it's the next day or a few hours later. I'm like, okay, by the way, whatever you said there actually triggered this from childhood for me. I don't understand why, but it made me feel like this. Can we do whatever we were doing differently in the future? Or even just naming it. He's like, okay, then from now on, like one of them was, and I'll just name this, he'll be like, okay, I'm going to bed now. and it actually shuts me down and I get triggered. And the other night I was like, "But the lights are on, but your cup's still on the counter, but the dog needs to go out." And I was like, "Huh?" And he was like, "Pardon?" And I was like, "Um, I don't know." And I thought about it and I went upstairs 20 minutes later and I was like, "Okay, I know why that triggers me. I hate being alone in the dark. I don't want to take the dog outside in the dark. You went upstairs and it does trigger me from past relationships and I feel left alone, abandoned essentially. And now I have to go outside in the dark." So it's a whole pile of layers. And I was like, it was nothing to do with the cup. It had nothing to do with turning out the lights. It was just like, please don't leave me on the main floor alone in the night, in the middle of the night or late at night. And he was like, "Okay. So from now on, I'm going to grab your hand and go, come on, we're going to go to bed." And I'm like, perfect, perfect. That's what I needed. Right. So naming these little things, because I'm trained enough now that I can notice it generally when it's coming up in my system. And I'm like, oh, that's a trigger. And I think it would actually help some people identify what triggers kind of feel like when they're coming, because I know a lot of people in the beginning don't even know. They're like, "I don't know what a trigger is." So for
Mm.
me, I can feel this rush of emotion, like you were talking about in the dating app. Like I can feel it kind of solar plexus, maybe a little lower, coming up through my body. I can feel emotion sometimes come with it. I can feel a hit of remembrance sometimes, but not always, of what it's reminding me of. Generally, the emotion is the cue for me. And again, I've practiced and really do feel into my emotions and in my body, and I allow them to flow so I can feel the hit of grief or the hit of fear kind of come up in my system. How else would you explain those? Is
Yeah.
there any other ways
Mm.
that you would explain
There
a trigger or
are.
how you can notice? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to explain it a little bit through the freeze because I believe that a
Yes.
lot of people experience actually like numbness or
Yes.
dissociation or a checking out or a distraction when when something gets activated in the communication, especially with, and I want to be clear, like we have intimate relationships with more than just our partners. We have intimate
Mm-hmm.
relationships with our coworkers, with our teams, with people on social media. It's just like there's intimacy happening in all of these different places, and often that can evoke this like in the system where there is no
Yeah.
words. You
Freeze.
don't have
Yep.
access to your prefrontal cortex or the smarter parts of your brain. And so you don't know what a trigger is because you're frozen. You're just like,
Mm-hmm.
boop. And so it's really important to name that. I don't know. Right. And I go blank. When you go blank, that is a freeze response. And then later, when the event has been digested more in the system, then it's like the anger will come, the rush of emotion will come, the sensationality of like, I'm mad and I don't even know why. And one of the great things about somatic experiencing is that we're so trained to go back, 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 back. We're so trained to like, I mean, go back like days sometimes to be like,
Mm-hmm.
this started days ago, months ago, obviously years ago, but like this builds and builds and builds, but we're numb the whole time it's building. And then when it builds, then there's this big event of, why did you leave your cup out? And really it was, don't leave me in the dark alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been building since March when you moved in there, or since April when you got back from Bali. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
being more conscious of all this. This is a very subtle practice, but if you're
Mm-hmm.
just starting, it's just like, can you just say like, I feel weird. Like
I love that.
I regrooving is like a way of life. And I'm like, I just give you language of this, the most real thing. Like I talk in a whole different language and I understand that because I've been on my mat for 20 plus years in studying this work. But I'm like, you feel weird. Like that's the whole thing
Feel
that's going
weird.
on. I'm like,
Yeah.
baby,
Or I
I
feel
feel
blank.
weird. Yeah, like it's just so basic. Like, can we talk like a 3-year-old would? Like the 3-year-old shows us and tells us when they don't feel right and they cry and I make noises, like my partners can
Faces.
tell. Yeah,
Yeah.
my nonverbal can say everything. I'll be wiggling around and they're like, baby, what is going on? And I'm like, I'm not really
Something's
sure.
coming up. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah, like,
recognize The blank from back before. I used to go very blank almost in any conflict, in anything. I went blank way back when. And it took some de-thawing, it took some learning. What do you notice? What does it take, do you think, to go from blank to actually noticing and feeling? Is it more noticing and feeling?
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is where, like a lot of the parts work does come in of like, what is going blank? Who is going blank? And
Yes.
asking those questions. And also, specifically for women, getting the energy out through the throat and saying the words to explain it can be quite difficult.
Mhm.
Especially women who've repressed their voice. And I have communication as my jam. Like the only thing I'm connected in human design is my solar plexus in my throat, so I've always been able to get words out and really
And I
clearly and
haven't.
concisely and compassionately, right? And
I have
so
not. I had to
yeah,
learn how to.
yeah. And
And
I
I will share, by learning how to, it has created the most deepest intimacy in where I feel seen and heard, and my inner child feels seen and heard and supported, that I could have imagined, ever could have imagined. But it does take practice, and it is uncomfortable learning how to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, a big part of regrooving. And we do role play rooms where they're just devoted to getting the words out and going and going and going over and over again until they're like, "Oh, okay." Because that freeze response needs that practice
Mhm.
because the body's scared even though you're not. The words are in there, but the body is so scared that it literally closes the loops to like, and so we practice and we practice and we practice and we regroove that loop until you're like, no, this is easy. And now there's the bigger things. And, it's so powerful. And again, it's the mind serving the body instead of, going, I know everything, and becoming egoic and living from this place of your collarbones up rather than
Mm.
your collarbones down.
Yes, I connect and relate to that. I used to literally live from what I would say chest up, right? Which is pretty well collarbones, pretty close. Bust up, right? Like a walking, talking head. And now it's like, no, like what does body feel, and how do you connect with body, and how do you notice when you're triggered even in your body, and where does it move? And every single part is a little bit different, right? It shows up different, but it's bringing in that acceptance and that approval and that compassion, like you were mentioning earlier on, where you're like, okay, I'm in relationship here and this is triggering, or I'm in relationship here and this is great. Also, can we, we're talking a lot about the triggers and so forth, but can we also talk about, all of the great stuff, which actually can also trigger us too, when it feels
Mhm.
too great sometimes for many people, right? And you're like, oh, that's too much. Am I, it comes back to the, am I worthy of this? Does this feel true to me? Am I deserving of this? There's so much to
Mm.
play with and navigate. And it sounds like a lot. Like if somebody's just starting, I think I can imagine that this is like, whoa, I don't know what to do to start here. This sounds like a lot. So let's break it down for those listening. It isn't a lot. I have to, like, now where I'm at, like it isn't a lot, and it hasn't been a lot for a while. Learning how to share my truth and trust what wants to come out. It isn't a lot, but I do understand that from the beginning it can feel scary and feel like a lot. So for people who are starting out, who are like, okay, what do I do here? First one you mentioned is start naming it, start
Mm.
identifying what you're feeling, start noticing.
Yeah.
What else would
Wait,
you share?
and I think that like a foundation of all of this that I don't want to skip over
Mm,
is why. Like, why am I even choosing to get curious? Why do I care about my triggers? Why do I want this to be different? So without knowing like intimately what the burning desire is here that we're choosing to listen to this podcast right now, and naming it really easily and knowing it really easily in your system, like, I want to connect more deeply with my person. I want
mm,
to, I want to be able to go to work and speak my truth, and I want to be promoted within a year. Like, I want to be making, $22,000 more a year every year starting this year. And in order to do that,
yes.
like, I know I need to heal this. Like, if we're not connected to that deeper thing,
That
then this
desire,
the
that
practice, the
yeah,
desire that
yeah,
has nothing to explain it, the desire that's so big that it scares the shit out of you, the desire that like comes from God, faith, love, however you want to frame that you're just like, oh, I am going to do
I
this in this
want this.
lifetime. Yeah, like
Yes.
really connecting with that deeply, because if we're
Yes.
not connected
Desire
to
is
that
so
deeply,
important.
then we stay in the survival mode, and the survival mode is always going to choose the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is the old familiar grooves, and you're not regrooving. And so that is so important. You can notice a name all day
Agreed.
long, but if all you're doing is trying to survive, your body's just going to get tired and exhausted, and you're going to come out of commitment. But when you are just anchored in your desire, so much is possible.
Yes, and I love that. And you know what, I haven't spoken a lot to desire in the most recent past because it's such a regular part of my everyday. It probably does come out here and there and what's so forth, but I haven't talked about a full podcast on desire. Like, what do you want? Getting really clear on your desires in a long time. So thank you so much for naming that. That is so important.
Yeah, and then from there, that noticing and naming process becomes much easier. And when you forget, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna like be of service to the thing that I want. I'm not moving towards the thing that I want if I keep going into these old patterns and behaviors. And I find it very interesting because I work with a lot of men and women, and the way that this manifests in each of our lives is so different, right? And and a lot of us choose to be with the opposite sex, and so we can be desiring the same thing, but we can have very different ways of coming towards that thing as a masculine man and a feminine woman. And that's a lot of what I work with in my couples work. And so it's just like, can we also just realize that when we're with even our boss, or our, like you're the physician on staff, the woman is, and then you have a male nurse going, well, I would do that totally different. And it's just
Mhm.
like really just knowing that there's going to be all these dynamics that come up in this, and connect back to your desire so that you can notice and name these things within you, because that healthy conscious relationship starts within, and then we need relationship to heal. Then
Mhm.
we got to
Mhm.
practice with other people to heal.
Which
And
I
other
love.
people, yeah, and other people are going to have totally different history, experiences, and behaviors and traumas and ways of moving through their desires that are going to be different than yours. But don't forget about yours, because that's the
Yes.
easy thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to keep, yeah, reminding what your desires are. And it's a practice that I've done mm, almost every day for like 7, 8 years of, 3 brags or celebrations, 3 gratitudes, and 3 desires. And one of them has to be, what do you want to feel? What do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? So is it regards to relationship, in regards to business, in regards to parenting, in regards to my purpose in the world? Like, keep focusing on these things that, one, what you're celebrating, what you're kicking ass at, because we're always kicking ass at different things. This is a tool that I learned originally from Mama Gina, which also got tweaked in a little bit with Layla Martin as well. But yeah, what are you celebrating? Because so frequently we go back to not noticing the good stuff that's going on in our lives. That's a key one. And then going through the gratitudes, again, another huge, powerful tool. And the desires. The desires are so important. And to always know what you're working towards is key. And I love that you reminded me of that today, because for some reason I'm just going through my motions of my desires. It's just such a regular daily practice that, yes, but what do you desire?
For sure. It's so important.
There's a
Yeah.
great, actually, a podcast episode. I cannot pull the number up right now, but it's probably about 50 or so episodes ago, on a practice that I did for couples on the desires, fears, and loves practice, which is a powerful practice that I practice a few times a week with my partner, which you're working on, like, what do you desire? And you're holding space for each other and giving each other a couple of minutes of what do you desire? And then what do you fear? And going through your fears, and then what do you love about me? And it's a deeply intimacy connecting practice, and very vulnerable, but also helps you realign with your desires and understand what your partner wants and understand how they think. Because if you're in a masculine feminine relationship with a male and female that way, I'm noticing, of course, like, men, they think different, right? Women think different than men, and men think different than women. And the way that we see a desire, or we want to go after a desire, can be very different. So to really hold space for each other in this way and understand each other and know and get a feel for a couple times a week of where their desires are lining up to is very powerful. Very powerful.
Absolutely. And to touch base with the subtle ways that maybe there's been a little bit of abandonment of the desire based on what someone else in your life wants or thinks, or
Mhm.
what someone on social media wants or thinks. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
it's such a powerful way to just be reminded of like, oh, shoot, like I started wanting this thing because it got coded on me through this other person. And I forgot to come back that that's not actually what I want.
Yeah.
And,
Gain clarity on
and
what you want.
yeah, or I was along the path of going towards that thing, and then I felt rejected, and that brought up the part of me that felt rejected my entire childhood. So there was a full stop that happened because that part took over instead of my self-led part. And now I need to reconnect with what I actually want and have a little sit and compassionately listen to where this part of me feels rejected.
Mhm.
Right. And so this
Mhm.
is like taking that work a little bit deeper, because we don't stop going because we're lazy usually. We stop going because something's activated our nervous systems in such a way that we are experiencing a state in our body that is stopping us and protecting us. And so, to deeply remember, like, everything that I did when I was trying to kill myself was actually self-protective. And so I just don't have any shame about how I behaved in any of those ways because they were protective.
You're
So
doing the
when you're
best that
move
you could do at the time to make sure you were surviving.
Absolutely, it was only survival, right? Well,
Yep.
but and worse and better than that, it was like the way to survive for me was like I wanted to die. Like that was the thing. Like that was the only thing that that part wanted for me. Like let's just check out in order to like make it all easier. And that part I did not have any leadership over when it was fully intact, when it was running the show. And we all have that part. My part was wanted to kill me, right? And everyone has some kind of part that is just like no, and it's protective. We
Sabotaging,
don't
no, yeah.
have that. And I don't want I disagree with the word sabotaging, because it's just like it's protecting. It's like, if
It's
you
protecting.
go
Yeah, it's
there,
protecting.
I don't know the unknown. And so I'm going to stop it because you've experienced deep levels of pain by going into the unknown before.
Yeah.
And this is where we require our self leadership. This is where we require relationship outside of ourselves. This is where we require, like, just that desire, so that we can
Yeah.
remember, like, oh, okay, when that part of me comes forward, I actually know to turn towards that part internally, have that conversation, do that thing, get a
'Cause
guide,
there's
a mentor, a
healing
coach,
there.
because then that part's going to trust me. We're going to integrate. I'm going to be able to lead it. And then we're going to be able to go on our merry way towards our desire. And I serve love, and love will dissolve the energy of fear in the body, because love is just a stronger energy system that once you start really
Mhm.
attuning to it and feeling it, the sensationality of, although it's woo, quite sensational, it's also when we learn to start to hold it and to play with it and to be with it and to direct it down and to root it, then ooh,
It's
you're
powerful.
alive.
It's
You
powerful.
alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the word sabotage, is a very quick word to put over it, but it is you protecting yourself from going somewhere that feels uncomfortable. And even though it's probably what you most desire, right? It's sometimes when we're not sometimes, almost all the time, when we're heading towards what we desire, it is the harder path to go towards, and it can feel right before you're leaning towards it, that energy of, "Ooh, what am I doing? This feels
Oh my
like too
God.
much or overwhelming," right? But I use that actually, that little fear as a, okay, you're on the right path. Like that is your next level of evolution to play with. That is your next thing that you get to heal. That is your next thing that you get to expand into.
Yeah, it's so fun. Like this is the game I love to play. This is my mastermind lead with love. It's just like playing in this field of I've never been there before and I'm going there.
Mhm.
And the level of rootedness and groundedness that really is there because their desire is so big. It's just so fun to play with. And, I truly believe that in our most intimate relationships, that the causation of expansion that happens together in our oneness, in our desire to like literally like please each other and to serve each other and to enjoy feeling each other in so much happiness and in so much pleasure and it's so sensational, and you haven't ever really felt it like that before. And so we have to take breaks and we have to breathe and we have to make eye contact. And my partner puts his foot on top of my foot and I'm like, baby, when you do that, like everything is just comes down. And like,
Grounds. Yep.
yeah. And then I'm just able to like, brrr, and my
Yep.
brilliance can be, and he's like, oh, right. Like I feel better, you feel better, we all feel better. And, it's just like the frequency at which we get to, can follow and attune to with each other becomes.
Dance.
Yeah, well, and it's like this, it's a vibration, right? It's like there's
Hmm.
something that's vibrating. You start to feel your system vibrating. You get anxious, you get butterflies in your stomach, your jaw starts to get tight. My thermodynamics are of heat come up. I'm sweating, my feet are like wet on the floor. Like, for a lot of people, your throat starts to close, your blood pressure is
Hmm.
raising, like all these things are happening. And it's basically telling you in the old way, the old groove, to stop.
Yeah.
But we're
And
like,
you get to choose
no,
to
I want
lean
to get
in.
this bigger. Like,
Lean
let's make it
in
bigger.
and to trust a partner in that and go, oh my gosh, this is coming up right now. I am feeling this. Ooh, let me share it with you, and to be seen and held and just listen to in that is very, very powerful. Very
Mm,
powerful. And
mhm.
this is what, I work with my clients and teach my couples how to do too, right? This deep, vulnerable intimacy, communication, connection. It's so powerful. And to do it from such a grounded, regulated most of the time, not always, because there's even me, I get unregulated many different times,
Oh,
but to name it and to come back into regulation in relationship and to hold and witness, it's such a beautiful, powerful connection and such a beautiful, powerful way of relating. I absolutely love it. And I want it for everyone.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I just want to speak to like, I have been, doing this work for a long ass time, like way before I stopped drinking. And there's just so much permission for me. And I love like living in the space where I do it wrong like all the time. I say the wrong
That's
thing. I
okay.
do the wrong thing. I'm walking around like, I don't even know. I'm curling up in a ball in the middle of sex because I'm like, oh my goodness, like, whew, like I don't know. All I know is I need to curl up in a little ball right now. And like, that's just
And
what's
you witness
happening.
me.
And the
Yeah.
dysregulation is the gift to particularly my partner, because I am this woman who is of service in this big way in the world. And he's just like, you don't have it all together. I'm like, fuck no, I don't.
No, I
And my
don't.
and my
Man.
student, my students know that, right? And my
Yeah.
Instagram knows that. And I really lead with that. Like, I do not have it all
No.
together. It's like regulate with Amy. Well, dysregulate to regulate, right? It's just like,
Yeah.
it's just like the messier that I allow myself to be, then the more safety I create within, and the more willingness I'm able to like see in myself. And I'll quickly give an example of this, because we talked about like in our own personal relationships, right? Of just we heal in relationship. And I really just in the last few weeks decided for myself that I wanted to close off any other energy systems, any other men that were in my field that were interested in me, that I was keeping that loop open. And one of my patterns and one of my behaviors to protect myself has been to always have a backup plan.
Hmm.
And I've done this brilliantly in relationship where I'm just not all in for myself. Even though I say I'm all in to my partner, I'm not truly all in. Like, I've got some kind of little escape plan in the field somewhere. And a few weeks ago, I just called in all that energy, made phone calls to people, and was just like, I'm just available for friendship. If that's not what you're capable of, then we've got to like change everything or don't call me anymore because I'm doing this for myself. And they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Are you in or not? Right. Like, I don't need to tell them the story.
Mm.
And it was just such this powerful exercise of the subtle, subtle, subtle ways where I wasn't being
All
true to
in.
myself. I wasn't being true to
Yeah.
myself. And when I
Well,
told,
technically, you were trying to protect yourself just in case so you had an out or you had another option,
absolutely,
right?
100%. But in that, I wasn't being receptive to the thing that I
Yeah.
want most. So I
Not
wasn't,
100% in, then you're not actually 100% in. And the reason that I've chosen to do the same is if you're not 100% in, your energy is different. And then they're also sensing your energy and they also might not be 100% in, or you'll never know what could have been because you
yeah.
both were never either 100% in.
And I wasn't serving my desire.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
was self-abandoning
Mm-hmm.
to my own truest desire.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yes.
I know that was the part that like nailed me to the cross. I was
And
like,
you're like,
shit.
okay, then let's go all in. And other things that have come up for me is, yeah, but I'm scared. And it's like, okay, well, can you just lean in and trust? Like, what do you have to lose? And can you trust that you can hold yourself at the end should anything happen that isn't what you want?
Absolutely. Well,
Yes.
things are going to happen.
So let's lean in and trust, like all in, all in.
Mm. Yeah, it's so powerful. And then, to share that and just be like, listen, I know that or I don't even think I said that. I said, like, I made a powerful decision today. I went to the beach. I made like ritual out of the whole thing. I was just like, we're doing this. And then I
Nice.
shared it with him. And I'm like, and I have no expectation from here. I did not do it for you. I did it for me.
Mm.
And like, oh, I can
Mm.
feel tingle all the way through. It's just like, that is my desire to
Yeah.
like come to bring this full circle, to come home at this level in my lifetime imperfectly and be 49 years old and literally for the first time in relationship. And I've had beautiful relationships. Something so different now.
I concur with myself as well. And I'm 48 and a
Yeah.
half. Totally concur. And it's the best ever. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing.
Mm.
Where can people find you? We're going to drop all the links in the show notes as well, but just
Yeah.
do them off quickly for us.
Instagram, everything's Regulate with Amy. So Regulate with Amy. Just type it into the
Regulate with
internet
Amy.
webs. Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of it's the same as these. And YouTube, the whole thing. Regulate with Amy
Fabulous.
is the way to find me. Yeah. And then you'll have a
Fabulous.
particular link that you can share with everyone that will be for your benefit as well. And they can check out Roots and Lead with Love and the School of Regulation, which is totally complimentary. And there's lots of
Amazing.
beautiful practices in there that are complimentary to get you started on your journey.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. All those links will be in the show notes. Thank you. It's been such a pleasure to be on here and to connect with you. And I've loved every chat we've had to this point, even though we didn't record till today. But it's been beautiful. And
Yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
Kimberly.
so much.
Yes.
Till next
Have a good
time,
day.
everyone. You too.